5, 4.
Good evening and welcome to this evening's Development Management Committee meeting. I am Joan Grime, Councillor for Culcheth, Glaisbury and Croft, and I will be chairing the meeting. Due to the current coronavirus pandemic, the Council have taken steps to follow restrictions and health guidance in relation to social distancing, whilst balancing the needs of carrying out our regulatory functions. This is the 13th meeting of this committee that is being held remotely. The agenda for the meeting will run as per the usual format. The meeting is being broadcast live to the public, who have had the opportunity to make written representations which have been distributed to members. However, there will be no input from the public during the meeting. This is in line with the Coronavirus Act of 2020, Section 78. Present at the meeting are elected Borough Councillors plus officers of Warrington Borough Council. I will now ask all those present to introduce themselves. Will councillors also confirm that they have received the agenda and reports on the applications and have a copy in front of them? Starting with introductions now, Councillor Barr, can you introduce yourself?
Good evening, I'm Councillor Bob Barr. I represent Lim North and Thelwall and I have the committee papers before me.
Thank you, Councillor Carey.
Good evening, Chair. Councillor Peter Carey representing Fairfield and Howley Ward, and I confirm that I have all the relevant papers and amendments in front of me.
Councillor Flaherty.
Good evening, Councillor Flaherty, Fairfield and Howley, and I confirm that I have all the papers and agenda in front of me.
Councillor Friend.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Graham Friend representing Portland North. I can confirm I've got all the papers in front of me.
Councillor Mundry.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Karen Mundry representing Latchford East Ward. I've got the committee papers in front of me and all the other relevant papers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parish.
Well, I'm Councillor Steve Parish. I represent Chapelford and Old Hall Ward, and I've read all the papers and have the agenda in front of me.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Good evening, I'm Judith Wheeler, Councillor for Appleton, Hatton, Stretton and Higher Walton. I confirm that I've got the papers, read them and I have them in front of me.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Hi, Councillor Wright representing Busey Whitecross, confirming I have all the papers and agenda in front of me.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll also ask the officers to introduce themselves. Democratic Services.
Good evening, Katie Halliwell, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you. Legal Services. Paul, are you there? Paul Clisby.
Yes, it's Paul Clisby from the Legal Department.
Thank you. Planning, Nikki.
Hi, Nikki Gallagher, Development Manager.
Transport, Mike.
Thanks, Chair. Mike Taylor, Highways Development Control.
Thank you. And Steve Park.
Good evening, Chair. I'm Steve Park, Director of Growth.
Thank you. Right, apologies. Have we received any apologies?
Just apologies from Councillor Tony McCarthy.
Right, thank you. Now declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest which they have in any item of business on the agenda no later than when the item is reached. Have we any declarations? Councillor Barr? Councillor Barr? I'll come back to Councillor Barr at the end. Councillor Carey?
Nothing to declare, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Flaherty?
Nothing to declare, thank you.
Councillor Friend?
Nothing to declare. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mundry.
Nothing to declare, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Parish.
Nothing to declare. Chair, thank you.
Councillor Wheeler.
Nothing to declare, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Nothing to declare.
Okay, have we got Councillor Barr back now?
Yes, I'm back. Mute unmute doesn't seem to be working on my version of Teams, but I'm now unmuted. Item number 1 is in the neighbouring ward to mine, within a few feet of my ward. I have heard one representation from a resident. I've not expressed the view, and I approached the application with an open mind.
Sounds good. Any comments, Paul Clisby?
No, that's fine. There's no problem with Councillor Barr participating.
Okay. Also, I have no disclosable interest in any item on the agenda. Right, the minutes of the meeting, minutes of the last meeting. Has any member seen a problem with the minutes of the meeting on the 11th of November, which have been circulated to you? Just speak up if you have. I confirm that the minutes of the DMC meeting held on the 11th of November 2020 are a correct record. We go on to planning applications. Item 1 is application number 2020-37158. That's 14A, The Cross, Lim, Warrington, WA13 OHP. This is for a variation of condition, proposed variation of condition 5 on midnight on Mondays to Thursdays, 11 AM to midnight, midnight, Fridays and Saturdays, and 11 AM to midnight on Sundays, bank holidays or public holidays. On the previously approved application 2019-35968, restaurant hot food takeaway. The recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Can I ask the development manager to present a report?
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to attached premises in the centre of Lim, immediately adjacent to Sainsbury's, and providing a frontage towards the stops. Planning permission was granted in January 2020 for a change of use from an optician's to restaurant takeaway, with a maximum of 6 seated covers subject to conditions. The application currently before members seeks to vary condition 5 attached to that application to allow for an extension to opening hours. The current condition details operating hours of 5 PM until midnight, Monday to Friday, 5 PM until midnight, Saturdays, and not at all on Sundays or public holidays. The application seeks to amend the opening times to 11 AM until midnight, Monday to Thursday, so this change consists of daytime use only. 11 AM until midnight on Fridays and Saturdays, and this change consists of daytime use and extension of half an hour on Friday evening. And 11 AM to 11 PM on Sundays and public holidays, and this change introduces the opening of the premises on these days. The opening time will be consistent with the remainder of the week, with a shorter day proposed. The application is before DMC because of an objection received from
Nikki, can I just ask you for a clarification there?
Yeah.
On the screen and also in my agenda,
yeah,
I've got 11 AM to midnight on Sundays, and I think you just said 11 PM unless I misheard.
Yes.
Is that an update?
So if we look in amended plans, so the description of development that appears is as it was submitted. So that was what was submitted to us. Now, if we look in the agenda pack, paragraph 3.1 on page 12, we can see there through negotiation, we've received an amendment to those opening hours, and now it's 11 AM till 11 PM, and that's reflected in the conditions.
Right, thank you. So I'd not picked up on that. I'd just taken it from the description of the development at the beginning. So I hope everyone's noted that that change. Right, thank you. Sorry to interrupt you,
No
Nick.
problem. So the application is before DMC because of an objection received from Lynn Parish Council on the basis that the originally approved operating hours were a factor in the granting of that permission. They also refer to the operation of a different hot food takeaway close by, which includes more restrictive hours, the reason, as stated in the decision notice, being to protect residential amenity. Councillor Fradgley has also objected to the proposal based on the impact of noise and general disturbance on local residents. The application was publicised by 21 neighbour notification letters and by press notice. 2 objections have been received as a result, and these are detailed within section 4 of your report, but can be summarised as an increase in noise and general disturbance. As members are aware, all planning applications must be determined in accordance with local planning policies unless other material considerations indicate otherwise. The relevant local planning policies contained within the core strategy are contained within section 6 of the report. And you'll also see reference there to there is one principal issue associated with the application, and that is the impact of the extension in operating hours on residential amenity. The nearest residential properties are considered to be 2A Pepper Street, which is 15 metres to the east, in effect opposite the side of the premises, and Thelmere Lodge, which is 10 metres, approximately 10 metres to the south, which is at the back of the premises. In terms of the assessment then of the application, it's considered that the proposed extension of hours to 9 AM would provide an active shop frontage during daytime hours, similar to any other commercial property in this location, and it would not adversely impact on residential amenity. It's what is to be expected in a local centre. Friday openings are proposed to be extended by half an hour, and this would align to the approved Saturday opening. Given this and the operating hours of other venues in the locality, it is considered that the proposed extension of Friday opening hours would not result in a significant adverse impact on residential amenity. In terms of Sunday hours and those relating to public holidays, there are a number of other businesses within the vicinity that operate similar opening times, and this is material to the consideration of this application. Examples have been provided within section 9.6 of the report. The proposal will be unlikely to result in a significant detrimental increase in noise and general disturbance above current levels, and additional controls are in place to prevent such from the plant and equipment that are on site. I just want to also pick up on the point by the parish council in relation to the reason for restriction of hours relating to residential amenity, and what that does in effect. The reason, that's a standard reason, and it will be applicable to the host application that this relates to as well. And what we mean when we talk about restriction to prevent to safeguard the residential amenity of neighbouring properties, we're talking about the principle of that condition being in place, not necessarily those hours. So we put a restriction of hours condition on to protect amenity, and usually in usual circumstances those restrictions refer to the advertised hours that have been submitted to us. So we haven't elongated those, and that's where those hours come from, is what has been submitted to us or further negotiated down rather than up without further consultation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes,
that makes sense. Okay then. So then, for these reasons, it's recommended for approval. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can confirm that we've received additional written representations from Councillor Fradgley, Gillian Fox, Stephen Gavin and Greg Major. These were all objections. Another representation arrived later, but I haven't included it because it happened that all the points had already been made effectively by the other 4 that I will now ask you to confirm that you've read and understood. Councillor Barr?
Confirm.
Councillor Carey?
Confirm.
Councillor Flaherty?
Confirm.
Councillor Friend?
Confirm.
Councillor Mundry?
Confirm.
Councillor Parish?
Confirm.
Councillor Wheeler?
Confirm.
Councillor Wright?
Confirm.
And I have also read and understood the representations. I confirm these representations will be included in the minutes of this meeting. I will now invite comments and questions from members to officers in turn, starting with Councillor Mundry. Have you got any comments or questions for officers?
No comments or questions, Chair.
Councillor Parish.
Not at this stage, Chair.
Councillor Wheeler.
Yes, Chair. Can I just have clarification from Nikki again about the change to the opening hours as set, which she mentioned to you before?
Yep, so certainly, Chair. So the open hours in the description of development in relation to Sundays and public holidays was 11 AM till midnight.
Yeah, so it's now
through the course of the application that's been negotiated down, and that's 11 AM till 11 PM now.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wright.
Nothing at this time, Chair.
Councillor Barr.
Thank you, Chair. I do have some concerns about this application. First, as a question to Nikki, the comparable premises that you've listed in Lim that have similar opening hours all are seated venues with a large number of covers inside. This venue only has 6 seats inside and is basically a carry-out venue rather than a sit-in and eat venue. Also, there is a slight problem that it is adjacent to 2 benches, not material relevant, but one of which is a memorial bench to a former member of our committee, Councillor Sheila Woodyard. And those benches are very popular with children from school during the day and youths and youngsters in the evenings. So unfortunately, immediately opposite these premises and predating the premises, nothing to do with the premises, if there is antisocial behaviour in Lim, then it takes place immediately outside these premises. And I've certainly previously had representations from occupants of Thirlmere Lodge who live above the Thai restaurant and above a venue called The Venue, that their residential amenity and their ability to sleep or to go to bed at a sensible hour has been adversely affected by those. The Thai is a very quiet restaurant, and in fact The Venue, I think, have taken steps to reduce noise after 11 PM out of recognition of those residents, and there are residents, as you said, directly across the road. So I am very keen that we should not be extending the hours of operation of this restaurant at all, because I think that the objections that it have an impact on residential amenity, and my concern also that it could have a relationship to antisocial behaviour in the centre of the village, are both valid.
Okay, do you want to make any answers to that?
Can I just repeat the question to Nikki about the comparator, about this not being a sit-in, this being a carry-out venue effectively, as opposed to the others being sit-in restaurants?
Okay, Nikki.
In terms of their identified use class, that would be the case. So the venues identified, I think it's 9.6, do relate to restaurant uses. Obviously, there are comings and goings from that when people leave, whether they're subject to a certain dispersal. But I appreciate that's not a constant noise outside that you might be looking that you may consider to be linked to a premises such as this. I think looking through the representations that we've received, one of the objections that we've received as related to this premises is operational at the moment, and it has said that since this has become operational, that they have noticed additional noise associated with that particular area, with that square. And I think just on that, I think it's just worth looking at what the last few months has held generally, and the use of those restaurants, which were previously a use class as A5, as general restaurant use. And from March, the government introduced new guidelines, which in March then saw that restaurants could effectively operate as takeaways, given the situation that we're in. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether we could associate any antisocial behaviour with this particular premises or with any other uses within the vicinity are also operating a takeaway service, which they can lawfully, in a planning sense, allow to do so at the moment within those restrictions. If that was the case and there's antisocial behaviour, that is a public meeting space, as you say. The seating is available for people to use and congregate. Whether there is a link between this particular facility and those benches is something that I'm not directly aware of.
Chair, if I may.
Councillor Barr, yes.
Yes, that's very helpful from Nikki. I would make an observation that whilst the use class of the restaurants has allowed them to operate as takeaways, in fact, we've taken advantage of the Thai as a takeaway to a great extent, and I know the other restaurants have kept their businesses going as takeaways. What they are is they're providing a full meal to take away, and normally people will go in, collect the meal and take the meal home, whereas these premises, as well as the fish and chip shop, which doesn't open anything like as late as this, are finger food venues. So they are selling food that normally you'd expect to eat hot immediately out of a box or out of a wrapping and not take home. In fact, if you did take it home, it'd probably be pretty unfortunate because it'd be cold by the time it got home. So I think that these premises really are different because they are a fast food outlet, and fast food means people wanting to eat immediately afterwards. And for that reason, I do have quite a large degree of sympathy with the objectors.
Thank you. Councillor Carey, have you any comment or question?
Yes, Chair. By and large, I think I agree with the comments of Councillor Barr. I think this has gone a little too far in what is being asked for. And the question I asked myself is, when the original application came in seeking approval, had these hours been declared then, would we have been inclined to approve it or reject it? I suspect the level of objection would have been much higher had these hours been stated at the outset. So my feeling is that to come back a short time later and seek an extension after the approval has been given is not really fair on the residents, and I sympathise with the objectors on this occasion.
Thank you. Councillor Flaherty, have you got any comments or questions?
I think I'm inclined to agree with both my colleagues, Councillor Barr and Councillor Carey, and would consider that this is a takeaway for instant consumption, and we know from bitter experience in the inner wards of the devastation that can cause in terms of litter, mess and antisocial behaviour, and I think, yes, I would have sympathy that maybe this is a little bit too much for a takeaway of this nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Friend, have you got any comments?
Not at this time, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Nikki, have you got any response that you would like to make to the last three comments?
Just a couple of points, if I may, Chair. Firstly, I think just in terms of a differentiation between different types of takeaway. So in planning terms, there is no differentiation. So I accept that this is operational at the moment. It is a fast food restaurant. It has got the restaurant element to it, but it is a fast food restaurant. But in planning terms, we don't differentiate between a takeaway of that nature and any other takeaway. So that's one thing. And just the other point just to mention is that the principle of the facility has been established through its previous granting of planning permission. So those associations with litter, mess, etc. We haven't got the opportunity to revisit those through this application.
Thank you. Councillor Mundry, do you want to make any comment now or question?
No comments or questions,
okay.
Chair.
Councillor Parish.
Chair, comment has been made about other places, and I'm not quite sure on what basis we give Lim privileged position on this. compared to Orford Lane or any other places where residential amenity is affected by having takeaways. I mean, we're talking about a daytime use and half an hour on one evening extra. So I'm not really sure that what's been said in the objections really makes that much difference. I mean, Lim's a nice village, but I'm not quite sure on what basis we'd make particular exceptions for being in Lim to what we'd normally allow when we allowed one on the main road at Penketh a few months ago. And I'm struggling to see why we would say you can't do it in Lim and actually blame ASB for saying you can't have it in Lim. It seems very strange to me, that.
Right. Does Nikki or Paul Clisby want to make any response to that?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, I would just reiterate what Nikki has said in relation to sort of use classes and everything she said, in fact, and of course just remind members that antisocial, if there are problems with antisocial behaviour, particularly away from the premises, then they are properly dealt with through the use of the various powers we have and the police have in relation to that, in terms of litter or noise or misbehaviour generally.
Thank you.
Chair, could I ask? I mean,
yes,
we've slipped into the problem of nuisance generally, which is not normally a planning issue. But again, I'm trying to make sort of comparisons. In the town centre, of course, you had Knightsbridge Court and residents there in Palmyra Square before you sort of declared it was going to be lots of bars as part of the cultural quarter. And it's one of those difficult issues. I'm sure Paul will tell us about nuisance. If there is a nuisance, the fact that the nuisance was there first is neither here nor there. If you come to the nuisance, it's still a nuisance. But I think if you're living in a town centre or even a vibrant village centre like Lim, you need to expect some noise, frankly.
Sorry. Do you want to come back on that, Paul? Have you any comments?
Only to say that I mean, as my understanding is, I mean, obviously there is statutory nuisance and there are powers in relation to that, but as I understand it, we're not talking necessarily about nuisance directly at the premises, and in fact we may not even be talking about nuisance because of course we are talking about residential amenity, which potentially is at a lower level than what would be a nuisance. I think really the difficulty here is that there are powers relating to public nuisance and antisocial behaviour, and it's really to do with the particular connection to this business, isn't it, and this location, rather than public spaces around it, really.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler, do you want to make any comment?
Thank you, Chair. I think they're always difficult, these applications, where it's an incremental increase in opening hours, because it's a cumulative effect, isn't it? That once you've allowed one, you can't allow the next. You can't allow an additional half hour here or an extra half hour there. And this is what's happened to someone like Stockton Heath, where, quite frankly, it's a bit like the Wild West on a Friday night. It's great to see a thriving, busy village. But I think in the case of this Lim application, this is very close to a couple of residential properties. And I worry that it's a bit of the thin end of the wedge with this, that once we start allowing, there seems to be nothing to stop that ball rolling, because once a planning permission's is given, it's given, and it doesn't seem with applications of this sort there's any way you can draw a line. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, have you got any comments now?
No comments, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Barr, do you want to come back with anything further?
I would like to thank Councillor Carey for his observations, which I think are quite right. That the original permission was given with specific hours that were considered appropriate for this location, and the flip side of that is that extended hours are not appropriate for this location and would probably have led to the refusal of the original application. So I would certainly move for a refusal of the application.
Councillor Carey, have you got any further comment?
Nothing further to add, Chair. No, I agree with Councillor Barr.
Councillor Flaherty?
Nothing further, Chair.
Councillor Friend?
Nothing further, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. We've been round twice. Does anyone else wish to make a further comment?
Chair, if I may just, sorry, Steve Parrish, just asking whether those who are opposed to it are opposed to the extra half hour on a Friday night, or to the earlier opening, or to the Sunday and bank holiday opening.
It's not a pick and mix situation, is it?
No. All of the above is my answer. That the original application had appropriate hours. This application has inappropriate hours.
Okay. Nikki, do you want to comment on that about whether we should? Well, obviously we've got the option to accept the whole thing. We've got the option to turn down the whole thing, but have we also got options to change, in effect, what the application is in the way of allowing some but not others?
Yeah, so just a couple of points to come back to there, if I may, Chair. So the first one, it was relation to something that Councillors Barr and Carey have mentioned there about how this application has evolved. So the application was submitted with a certain set of hours, that is correct, and we've assessed those and we've approved those at those time. But we haven't, when we made that decision, we haven't assessed anything wider than the hours that have been proposed. So we didn't consider whether a later opening would be acceptable when we considered it the previous consent. Now, if they'd applied for those hours at that particular time, we would have considered those hours, and our recommendation as officers would have been consistent with the recommendation that you see before you tonight. So there would be no reason why we would have treated it any differently if we'd have seen those at those hours within the application that was approved in January. So I think that's just an important point to make, just about how we consider applications. And then the second point there is just whether there's an opportunity to vary the condition that's been that we're looking to that we're considering tonight. And yes, there is. So that is an option. So the application's been made on that basis. But if members were minded to consider that daytime use is acceptable in terms of providing more active street frontage and being consistent with other properties in the locality, well, then they could approve those opening hours with a shorter timeframes in the evening. I mean, the Sunday hours, they're up for debate still, I think, in those terms. But yes, you can amend those hours, and you can put a condition on to amend those hours. The applicant does have a right to appeal, the same as he would do with a refusal, would have a right to appeal against a condition.
Right, thank you. Well, I think that's an important point and probably worth going round again. We've already had Councillor Barr's answer, I think, but I'll go round in the same order. On the point that Nikki has just very clearly set out about the possibility of allowing some of these extended hours and not others, Councillor Mundry, have you any comment to make?
Yeah, I think if the hours were different, probably it would be acceptable, but at the moment I don't think it is.
Right. So do you want to make a comment on which you'd be happy with, like the weekday use or the Sunday use?
Well, I think the Sunday use sounds a bit too late for me, you know, so
11:30.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So that's one suggestion. Councillor Parish, have you any comments?
No, I'm fairly content with it, and for the sake of half an hour on a Friday night and tinkering with an hour or so on a Sunday and the all-day use, yeah, having raised it, I'm not sure I'd want to distinguish.
Yeah, it's the Sunday holiday use is all new, of course.
Yeah.
Councillor Wheeler, have you any comment?
No further comments, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Wright?
No comment.
Any further comment, Councillor Barr? Besides the emphatic one before.
No further comment, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Carey?
No, Chair. I think had there been sort of support around the table for doing a variation on what's being proposed, it may have been appropriate to defer, but there doesn't seem to be, so it's straightforward approval or rejection as far as I can see.
Okay. Councillor Flaherty?
No further comments, Chair.
Right. Councillor Friend?
Nothing further, Chair. Thank you.
Right. Any further points of clarification from officers?
No, thank you, Chair.
Right. Councillor Barr, would
Chair,
you
can I
like
just
to
mention,
make a
Chair,
proposal?
can I just mention
Sorry.
one thing? Just
Sorry, who's speaking?
Remind members that there is an additional control in place, which is that, sorry, it's Paul Clisby.
Yeah. Sorry, Paul, carry on.
Yeah, Paul. Yeah, just to say there is an additional control in place, which is the requirement for a licensing consent in relation to activities after 11 p.m. at night.
Yes.
So just to remind them that there is that additional control as well as the planning controls.
Yes, thank you.
May I ask Paul Clisby a question, please, Chair?
Yes.
Paul, if we move refusal, it'll be on the grounds of residential amenity, but actually there is a concern about the impact on the immediate area around the benches and around the bus stop. Is there any other form of amenity that we can include in our reasons for refusal? At the moment, they are operating in a way which is acceptable and it's in line with the original application. But the concern of residents and the concern of the parish council is that an extension, both in the daytime and in the evenings, would change that in an area that already has problems. Can we include that in any way in our reasons for refusal?
Paul? Paul, have you got
I think that's more of a question for, yeah, I think I heard that. Yeah, I think that's more of a question for Nikki really, whether it could, I mean, obviously, if we're saying that there is a detriment to public amenity, presumably that is something which an inspector on appeal could take into account, or you're entitled to take into account. Obviously, you would have to, we would have to evidence what we thought to be the harm in relation to that. If we're not talking about detriment to the residences in the area, but in fact we are talking about detriment to public spaces.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nikki. Do you want
very helpful. Thank you.
I think it would
Nikki,
be.
Do you want to add anything?
I think trying to argue a point against detrimental to public amenity would be very difficult. Very difficult to argue through an appeals process. I think the fact that within that square at the moment there are benches that they made available, and that effectively people are using the benches for the intended purpose, would be contrary to the argument that we would be setting forward. So I would advise against that.
All right.
Okay. Any further comments from anyone?
I'm going to go out on a limb again, Chair, and just point out that there were 21 neighbour notifications. We've had less than half a dozen objections.
Okay. Noted. Councillor Barr, do you want to make a proposal?
I move refusal on the grounds of detrimental impact on residential immunity.
Councillor Carey, do you want to second that?
Yes, Chair, I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a proposal moved and seconded. Does anyone wish to propose an amendment to that motion? Right, can I hand over to Democratic Services, Katie, to take the vote?
Thank you. So Councillor Barr?
For.
Councillor Carey?
For.
Councillor Flaherty?
For.
Councillor Friend?
Against?
Councillor Grime?
Abstain.
Councillor Mundry?
For.
Councillor Parish?
Against.
Councillor Wheeler?
For.
And Councillor Wright?
For.
So that proposal has been approved.
Thank you. We go on to item 2, application number 2019-36241, phase 4 to 7, Omega South, Warrington, WA5 7XQ. Outline planning permission for the development of up to 617 residential units and mixed use zone to include retail, food and drink uses. That's classes A1, A2, A3, A4 and A5. Hotel, use class C1. Extra care facility, use class C2. And non-residential institution, use class D1. With details of access only and all other matters reserved for subsequent approval. The recommendation is to approve subject to conditions and an S106 planning obligation. Can I invite the Development Manager to present a report?
Thank you, Chair. So the application relates to planning consent for up to 617 residential units and associated mixed-use provision to include an extra care facility, retail food and drink uses, and non-residential institution. And the application seeks to establish the principle and details relating to access only. The site comprises of 24 hectares to the west of Burton Wood Road, south of Junction 8 of the M62. B2 and B8 development is currently under construction to the north of the site with open space to the west. Residential properties are located within the wider area to the east and further residential development is currently under construction to the south. Members will recall that the proposal was considered in detail at Development Management Committee on the 5th of August, when a resolution was made to approve the application subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement, subject to the Secretary of State not wishing to intervene. An update note to the published report was provided to members ahead of that DMC, and this identified amendments to 6 conditions which are contained within pages 36 and 37 of your report on tonight's agenda. Due to the addition of additional and deleted conditions, a full schedule was appended to that update note. Retrospectively, it has been identified that that schedule appended to the update note utilised a previous draft of the conditions and did not reflect those proposed to be unchanged as listed in the agenda report. And the agenda report, the full report, is also contained within tonight's agenda pack and starts on page 52 for your ease of reference. So the purpose of this evening's report is therefore to obtain clarity on the resolution from members. The application is recommended for approval subject to Section 106 and conditions as detailed within tonight's report, which begin on page 20 of your agenda. The conditions schedule attached to tonight's report includes all conditions initially published in the agenda report to members for the 5th of August committee and incorporates only those changes detailed in the subsequent update note, which are on pages 36 and 37. For clarity, during the previous consideration of this application, members specifically requested that affordable housing be available in perpetuity, and this has been written into the Section 106 agreement. For information, following DMC's previous resolution, the caseworker unit working on behalf of the Secretary of State has confirmed that the application would not be called in, and they do not wish the application to be re-referred following this evening's resolution. On this basis, the recommendation is to approve the application subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can confirm that we've received no additional written representations. Before I open it to discussion, for clarity and following Development Manager's report, I want to emphasise that we've already approved the essence of this application on the 5th of August. The updates to the conditions were approved on that night as well, and we are not revisiting any of those decisions. We are simply being asked to agree that the new report on pages 20 to 35 accurately sets out what we've already approved, with the details of the S106 as well. So I'll now invite comments and questions from members to officers in turn, starting with Councillor Parish.
Councillor Parish. No questions at this stage, Chair.
Okay.
I've not gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, but I'm assuming the officers have, and I will be content.
Well, I have gone through them with a fine-tooth comb, and the only difference I found that was we've dropped the subject to a call-in from the Secretary of State. Councillor Wheeler, any comments?
No, Chair, only to add that I'm grateful that the affordable housing in perpetuity has been written into the developments. Thank you, Chair.
That's good. Councillor Wright?
No comments, but grateful that that's happened as well.
That's good. Councillor Barr?
Yes, I'm grateful as well. I have one slight concern, which I probably had back in August as well, which is this is a very substantial approval in principle, and as it stands, everything else becomes reserved matters and presumably could be dealt with by officers without coming back to our committee. Now, I think we are potentially buying a bit of a pig in a poke here, because I don't know what this area is going to be like afterwards. All I know is what the mix of uses is going to be. I don't know whether it's going to be well designed or badly designed, and that's obviously a matter of opinion. How sustainable it's going to be, how many of the residents will be able to access work, leisure, shopping on foot or by bicycle within 15 minutes. There's a whole range of details about the nature of the neighbourhood which are left out from this outline application. So my question to Nikki really is, at what stage will councillors and the public, given the scale of the proposed development, have some sight of what is proposed and some say on whether they like it or not? And would it be possible or appropriate to put in a condition that Places Matter or another design consultancy should automatically be involved in assessing the details of the master plan once it's been fleshed out?
Okay, I'll pass that question to Nikki, but do remember that we have already passed on the 5th of August what the conditions were, which may affect that answer. But Nikki, what have you got to say?
So in terms of when we're going to see the reserve matters coming forward, I mean, at this stage, we just don't know. So the reserve matters will be submitted in due course in accordance with the timeframes that are outlined in conditions 1 and 2. And from a formal planning perspective, that is the stage when those details will be in the public domain. Prior to that, we would expect the developer to engage in pre-apps. We do work quite closely with developers within this area because of the large scale nature of development occurring within this particular area. So we would expect those to come through in advance, and we would expect them to liaise with parish councils, with local residents about what the details of that will come forward. So it is anticipated that you would see them before a formal application, but there is no formal requirement for that to happen. In terms of an additional condition that might be added to say that this must go through an independent design review, that wouldn't meet the test of conditions. We wouldn't be able to secure that through a condition. But I think increasingly we see these applications coming forward now, these large scale applications where we are increasingly making use of places matter, and we are encouraging these large scale applications to go down that route. So as part of the pre-application discussions, that's something that we'd look at.
Thank you, Nikki. I'm reassured.
Thank you. So, Nikki, just to clarify, did you say that the reserved matters will definitely come back to committee to be passed in the end?
No, it would still be. So that's the point where it's at when a reserved matters application is submitted, that would be the point at which it would be in the public domain, and then it would still be under the requirements of the Constitution as to whether that is returned to planning committee or not.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Going on to Councillor Carey.
No comments, Chair.
Councillor Flaherty.
No comment, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Friend.
No comments, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mundry.
No comments, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. That's round once. Does anyone wish to make any further comment from councillors?
No further comment.
Officers, any further points of clarification?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, I propose the motion then that the application is approved subject to conditions and a section 106 obligation. Councillor Flaherty, would you like to second that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the motion? Okay, can I hand over to Democratic Services to take the vote? Katie.
Thank you. So Councillor Barr?
For.
Councillor Carey?
For.
Councillor Flaherty?
For.
Councillor Friend?
For.
Councillor Grime?
For.
Councillor Mundry?
For.
Councillor Parish?
For.
Councillor Wheeler?
For.
And Councillor Wright.
For.
That motion is carried.
Thank you. Finally, agenda item 5, the appeal decisions summary. The report is attached to the agenda starting on page 97. 8 appeals have been decided and 3 received since the previous report. Does the planning officer wish to make any additional comment?
Just one, thank you, Chair, and that is in relation to Rush Green Road on page 97. It's listed as decision level delegated. It was actually a committee decision. And the appeal was dismissed.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members? Councillor Barr?
No questions.
Councillor Carey?
None, Chair.
Councillor Flaherty?
No questions, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Friend? Councillor Friend?
Sorry, Chair, wouldn't unmute. No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mundry?
No questions, thank you.
Councillor Parish?
No questions. We seem to be getting most things right, one way or another.
Yes, well spotted. I saw that too. In fact, you've stolen my thunder. I'm just about to comment on that. Councillor Wheeler?
No comments, Chair.
Councillor Wright?
No comments.
Any further points of clarification from officers? I propose that the appeal summary report is accepted. Councillor Friend, would you like to second that? Councillor Friend?
Yes, I would. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my mute and unmute all of a sudden.
Yes, I remembered as soon as I asked you.
Oh,
So
no,
that
she's got to me.
proposal is proposed and seconded. Can I hand over to Democratic Services to take the vote?
Thank you. So Councillor Barr?
For.
Councillor Carey?
For.
Councillor Flaherty?
For.
Councillor Friend?
For.
Councillor Grime?
For.
Councillor Mundry,
4.
Councillor Parish,
4.
Councillor Wheeler,
4.
and Councillor Wright.
4.
That is approved.
Right, thank you very much. Well, that meeting has gone very smoothly. Thank you, everyone, for your hard work and good preparation. And the meeting is now closed, and good evening to all of you.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, Chair.